So we'll do, as far as possible, an interactive session. If you, who has Wi-Fi? No, I'm just joking. We'll use this as our whiteboard, because otherwise it's kind of complex to have questions up and down. If you want to just stop me at any point in time, raise your hand, say, Peter, I want to challenge you, or I don't believe you, or I want to ask for the question, go ahead. This might work. This is experimental. So we all use open source, yes? Nobody questions open source as a way of making software anymore. We finished with that bullshit. I've been doing open source since '91, my first products, which I had to ship out as free software. Just people would not bother me about the price and so on. It was a very simple way of distributing software. And it's always been a challenge of how to make this work better, how to make the software process work better. It's not about technical quality of software. That's easy. I could do that when I was 17. But the really hard thing was how to get the software to do the right thing and to survive over time. These are very difficult challenges in any industry, and in our industry particularly, they're challenges that we've only recently learned how to solve. And open source looks like really the only long-term solution. And still making open source is very hard. So who here actually contributes to open source? Good. And who here has started an open source project? Okay, so of those who have started a project, how many of those projects would you consider to be successful? Good. What are your, let's have some of the major challenges and concerns and worries and for you, the major problems in doing that. We'll do this vocally, so sir.
Finding time to answer people's bug reports.
So user front office support. You've got problems and I'm supposed to help you for free because the software is free, therefore my time is free. Okay.
Getting other people involved so it's not just you and if you get hit by a bus.
Scaling, so making myself redundant problem, yes. Good.
Reviewing PRs.
Sorry?
Reviewing pull requests.
Reviewing pull requests, so administrative burden of building this infrastructure of people.
So,
You'll have to shout because I'm kind of deaf.
conflict between what you need to do on site for your company, your business, and what you need to do for the other developers around the world to make this something they want.
So just building a product is difficult because what you want to make sometimes people don't really appreciate, and what they want you can't really make. Okay, we'll stop there. So these are challenges of resources, challenges of delegation, challenges of getting people to join in. Now, if you're a smart programmer, and everybody here is a smart programmer, I assume, then you can make good software. That's like making music. If you're a good musician, you can make good music, by definition.
Peter?
Yes?
I'll challenge this.
Good. So we have a challenge to that assertion.
I find that there are a lot of smart programmers that can't think of product design. They can't think of the problem they're answering, so they make technically sound software that
Good.
is not answering.
So now the question is actually on definition of good software, which is good, because that's like my interview question. If I have a company, which I don't bother with, and I hire people, which I don't, then my first question is, how do you define good software? How do you define quality in software? Give me some criteria. Is it technical performance? Is it speed? Is it number of lines of code? Is it the documentation? Is it the website? Is it the front-end support facilities? Meh. Sorry? If it gets used. Relevance. Relevance is quality. There are companies which specialize in making massively, fantastically useless products. That's like their business is, let's invest in this huge, amazing thing, let's push it down the throats of our willing consumers, and then when they vomit it back up, we'll be like, okay, fire the team, start again. Over and over again. Hi, Google. And that's a good company. I mean, they're pretty smart, and still they make these massive mistakes. So relevance is very difficult. There's lots of competition out there. People are stubborn about switching. There's a very big cost to learning to use even a simple new piece of software. So making it attractive and making it relevant is very difficult. And then you have the problems of getting people to contribute. And then you have the problems that open source is underfunded. Nobody wants to spend money on on open source. No company I've ever worked with an open and happy heart give me money to write open source. Whereas if it's commercial software, they give me money. This is the irony. You get much more money to write rubbish than to write good stuff. So these are the realities of the world we live in, and it's not something that you can take personally, it's just how the world works. About 10 years ago, I was involved. Nicola, where's Nicola? Nicola, sorry. I'm not wearing my glasses, so I can't see anything. You're all just fuzzy faces for me. In NGO work on political level, and it was a very instructive lesson on how to build communities. What we found was that it was very hard. It was like very difficult. And it's one of these problems that I like, because I like interesting, difficult problems. I know it's possible to do. I know there are successful communities out there, very large ones, in many fields. And yet, we were hitting problems over and over and over again. Problems of funding, problems of motivation, problems of communication, problems of organization, problems of psychology. You have 90 good people and you have one idiot and he can trip up or she can trip up the whole project and destroy it. How do you stop that? And so I began thinking that there was a way to do this scientifically. And if you do enough experimentation on people, with their permission and with their cooperation, and if you collect enough data and you do enough observations and measurements over time, it turns out you can answer all of these problems. That's my assertion. That's 10 years of work. And I've documented this fairly deeply in a couple of books I've written. So one is the ZeroMQ Guide, which is an O'Reilly book and is also online. And chapter 6 of that book is a detailed walkthrough of today's talk. And even if you never use ZeroMQ, even if you hate CMQ, I don't care, read chapter 6 of that book if you're a programmer, because it will change how you see software. And in that chapter 6 of the book is a reusable process for making successful open source. Now, I know it's reusable and I know it's successful. I don't claim it's the only process. It obviously isn't, because we've tested it on lots of projects now. And we've given it to projects of all maturity, projects that started out as a blank page, projects that were already being rebooted from existing projects, and given this process to them, and it pretty much works. You can still break it, but it pretty much works. Okay, so you're just all believing me right now. And I'm in the software business. My job is to lie to you. Okay. The first step you have to take away from when you're making software, the first thing you must do to be able to scale and achieve this nirvana of solving all these fantastically complex problems is to stop caring about the software. Once you stop caring personally about the lines of code and the indentation, about the quality and about will this stuff actually build, once you can stop caring about that, then you can actually do it right. That's my experience. The more you care, the worse it is. And the reason for that is just basic psychology. When we care, we don't trust other people. And when we don't trust other people, we do everything the wrong way. This kind of hangs together like a complex recipe. It's like a self-supporting tripod. The only way to make relevant software over a long time is to have a large group of contributors who can think concurrently about the diversity of problem space and find the right solutions which emerge over time. You cannot do it by yourself in a garage. That's a myth. The individual smart inventor is the guy getting 10 million at Google and making Google Wave, or whatever it was they were making again, over and over again. It's brilliant and it's useless. The way to get relevance is to have a mass of people, a community, thinking about lots and lots of diverse problems, challenging each other in as real time as possible, so it's a distributed machine, learning the problem as they make the software, as they use it, and putting the results back together as quickly as possible. And the latency is very important. And my specialty is distributed systems. It's a very similar kind of model. That's the goal, and we can achieve that. It's actually quite simple to get to. Once you realize that your goal is to get people to work together rather than to build lines of code, then your focus changes. And now you come to psychology, and you come to motivation of individuals, and you come to regulation, and you come to authority, and you come to contracts which are about people rather than about code. Now, obviously, everybody who is coming up to such a project and contributing wants to make code and wants to use code. So there's no doubt about the goal. The goal is very clear. I'll take ZeroMQ as an example because it's a project I know well. Actually, it's many projects. It's a community of projects now. People use ZeroMQ. They take this thing. They download it. They try it. They use it. Most of the time, they have no comments, no questions. It works. They forget about it. Now and then, they're like, hang on a second. I can improve it. And they have an insight, and it obsesses them, and then they improve it, and they send us the improvement. That's the second majority case, and it happens. The default for most open source projects is then to say, why are you doing this? Why are you improving the product? Let me make it hard for you. Let me review your pull request. Let me check your credentials. Do I trust you? Now, these are the wrong questions. The right question is, thank you. How can I repay you for joining our project? Tell me what you want. That's the right question. Because what's important isn't that patch. And what's important and valuable to your project isn't that line of code. It's the person. And that person you must bring in, and you must get them to contribute and to join, and you must promote them as rapidly as you can, with as little pain to both sides as possible. So any pain at all you must remove. And that includes, for example, reviewing a pull request. If I've spent my weekend making a patch to a product, and it takes 3 months to sit in a queue to be reviewed, I feel humiliated, and I won't come back. Actually, if it takes 2 weeks, I'll still feel humiliated. Actually, if it takes more than 30 minutes, I'll be annoyed. But if you merge a pull request and you say, I trust you implicitly, I'll love you. I will actually feel the emotion of love and attachment, and I will really then want to contribute. And if you tell me, well, you know, Peter, your patch had bad indentation and you didn't follow our style guide, I will be horrified. I will read the style guide. I'll become a fanatical follower of style, and I'll do it better than the original maintainers. And what you see with contributors who are welcomed in this way is that they learn very, very rapidly, and they self-correct very, very quickly to the culture of the group. If the culture is documented, and if the culture is in the form of a contract rather than some kind of agreements over beer or food, then the good contributors will find those contracts, they will read them, they will immediately understand and empathize with them, and they will follow them, and they will enforce them. And they will know why. So it's very important as well to have documented contracts. And again, this is part of the culture that we have developed in ZeroMQ for doing this. It turns out that those contracts are completely reusable. Requires no innovation. You simply point to 2 things. Well, actually, you need 3 things. 3 things. Okay, 4 things, but obviously you need the vision of where this project is supposed to go. You need some kind of ideological direction. You need some kind of leadership. Those are givens. But what you need then is you need a license. There's got to be a license for the code. You can't just say, well, it's just, it's public domain. That does not work. We have started using the MPL v2 license because it's a nice share-alike license. It's a little bit like the LGPL with some stuff, but it's simpler, it's less politically tinged, it's accepted by all businesses, and it does what we need about sharing code, so the license. You need a style guide so that people can write code that actually looks like one person wrote it, and you need a regulation for the process. And we have one of those, it's called C4, and you can take C4 and you can point people to it and say, just use C4. And we've done this with projects where, so there was I won't cite the name of the project. Well, I will. Machine Kit it's called Machine Kit. And it's a project for embedded something using ZeroMQ. I'm sorry, I don't know the details. And the maintainers, there were 2 guys maintaining it, and they were very reticent about delegating control, and they felt very personally committed to the project, and they were pushing away contributors. It's a very classic story. This project is my baby, it's my ego. If you touch it, you're threatening my sense of value. So people using it, but finding it very hard to get this project actually alive. So there was a hostile fork by its contributors who forked it, renamed it, and applied this new process. Of course, the main maintainers were offended and said, like, we will not participate. It didn't matter. The fork blossomed into life, became happy, popular, popular at least internally, a happy place to be, and eventually at least one of the maintainers joined back in to the fork. Okay. So number 2, if you read chapter 6 of the book, then you already read this contract, C4. The contract says things like, everybody is equal, except the owners of the project. But everybody has the same rights of submitting patches, and every patch will be merged, unless it's really, really insane. So by default, it will be merged, and it will not be reviewed. It will be merged, and if there's a problem, we'll correct it with another patch.
So, like, even if tests don't run?
Yes. Now, let's go to the exceptions. So the question is, okay, this sounds very idealistic, and it sounds very sweet and lovely, and then my answer is Wikipedia. Seriously, we've been through this discussion, haven't we? We've been through this discussion. Oh, Wikipedia will never survive the vandals and the trolls and never survive the paid editors. Well, it seems to survive very well. It seems to have wiped out all the competition, and all the rumors of its death have always been exaggerated, and it's still my go-to reference for most things, and I don't think it's getting any worse. It turns out that vandals and trolls and criminal behavior are an essential vitamin in community building. As we know from our political action. Sir?
How do you avoid feature creep?
You're not using Twitter, are you? I just point out, that's okay. How do you avoid using feature creep? Okay. Let's get back to accuracy and minimalism in a while. First of all, I will come to the contract. I will discuss the contract and then come back to feature creep later. The contract says you are a contributor, you have rights. These are your rights, and it goes through these rights one by one. And it says you are a maintainer, you have these obligations, and these rights, go through them one by one. And it puts these together. It's a contract, like any contract. It's meant to be simple. It's meant to identify these rights and the exception to the rights. And the goal of the contract is to tell contributors, your patch will get in there if you do a number of simple things. Because the worst thing for a contributor is to take this project, to believe in this project, to make changes, and then be told, we don't like your changes. Me, as an owner of the project, has an opinion on your code, and I don't trust you, I don't like you, I don't even know who you are, therefore, no. And I will maybe be aggressive about it. I'll say, go away, or I will do like a very slow code review, or I'll be like, oh, it's in the pipeline for 6 months' time until you go away, whatever, passive-aggressive stuff. And this happens like all the time. This was almost the reason why I began this process, because I was contributing to ZeroMQ, my own project, and the maintainers who I paid were refusing to merge my patches. And I was like, guys, are you insane? I'm a better programmer than you. I'm sorry about that, but I really am. And my patches are really good, and I'm fixing stuff that you should have fixed before, and you're refusing my patch because you don't like my code. Are you utterly insane? And they're like, no, Peter, you're insane. I'm like, okay. Time for change. Don't review patches. Merge the damn things. Merge them as fast as you can and make it a game between maintainers to merge each other's patches. Never commit onto master. That's a sin, because it leaves no trace. It's a silent backdoor deal, you and the code. Don't do that. A patch is a request for attention. It's a request for an empathic response from someone else in the team saying, yes, I like your code. And the faster you get that response, the better you feel. And if it happens in 30 seconds, there's this feeling of, wow, it really feels great. It's hair-raisingly wonderful. And you want to give your contributors that feeling. So we have, literally, I will go to my phone. I will look at the number of pull requests. And there's 10, 20 a day. And every time I'm like, oh, I'm too late. Constantine Rack, who is like some guy who I've brought in, he's like merging everything on every single project. And I hate that guy. I can't get in front of him. Sorry, I don't really hate Constantine. He's a great guy. I think you were first, sir. But
you don't see any value in a clean project history?
So, project history. I want project history to be accurate. I don't clean history. I record history. There's a fundamental difference. If I'm Stalin, I clean history. But I don't I'm just a scientist. I want data. I don't interpret reality. I try to record it. If somebody is making a mess, I want that in history. And that mess and those commits and I have those in ZeroMQ. I have patches in ZeroMQ that are so disgusting. That person's career is at risk, as it should be. I have people who have made patches that are offensive. And if the guy says, oh, Peter, I want a job, I'll be like, let me just review your patch history and how much effort it took us to fix your sociopathic attitude to our code. And the guy's like, but you should have reviewed my pull request. I'm like, no, that's not my job. My job is to press the merge button. And I will merge your rubbish, and I will fix your rubbish because I can just do a revert. But I will record every action. And the only way to escape it is to change your name. And if you do that, I'll still catch you because I can smell bad code. It's the same signature. It's like, wow. And there was this one time in one of our projects where one of the nice guys in the team said, Peter, I'm going to write like we'll just do like an automatic reformatter, okay? So you can like submit patches and it'll like reformat. And I'm like, okay, they'll try that. And we tried that. And then it reformatted. And after about a week, I said, okay, I'm deleting the automatic code reformatting. Why are you doing that, Peter? I'm like, well, I want the contributor to know the difference between a tab and 4 spaces. I want them to read the style guide. I want them to take the effort to learn our rules. I don't care how esoteric they are. And I want them to show that. And if they fail, I want that to be data. And if you're doing an automatic reformatting of the code, we lose that information. And I want that data in there because I care as much about hunting down and punishing criminal behavior as I do about promoting the vast majority of good behavior. So now we come to the trust. And the trust is very simple. Most people, 96% of contributors, and probably more in our business, are fundamentally motivated to be good citizens. A fundamental motivation is to have a good track record, to be happy, to make others happy, and they do everything possible to make that the case. And it's your job as maintainer to clear the road and to snowplow away all of the difficulties to make that the case. And if you can do that, sorry, I'm on a rant now, so I have to wait a while. If you can do that, the contributor who gets that feeling will love you for life, or 6 months, whatever is the longest. But they will really have an emotional attachment, and it's a very good thing to have. It's what makes projects survive for a long time. It's how then you can delegate. And because people are being challenged like that to learn, and they're being rewarded for learning, and the learning is part of the work, you get up this slope of competence to the point where very rapidly you can delegate very important things to people. What you also get is the ability to detect bad behavior and punish it much, much more effectively. So one of the big problems in communities is that because it's basically a walk-up model where you can't rely on existing social networks to filter out criminal bad actors, you can't stop bad actors from coming in. If there's money or if there is the illusion of power or something attractive, it will attract bad actors like wasps to jam pudding. And they will come and they will start buzzing around and trying to get their little feet in the pudding. And as a maintainer, one of your jobs is to detect such people and to gently punish them. And I've got a section in the C4 which does that. And basically it says, if you have people who persistently cause pain to others in the group and cause stress and don't self-correct, then they're a bad actor. That's in definition. So the part about self-correcting, everyone can make mistakes. Everybody can break master. Everybody can do really stupid things. I mean, I'm an expert in that. Good God. But if you're the good actor, you realize it, you have this terrible emotional shame, and you do everything you can to fix it and stop it happening again. The bad actors are like, wow, rules. How do I break them to my profit? That's their first reaction, is how can I get around those rules? How can I mess with those people? How can I become the most important person in this project just for my own personal profit? And they come on like steamrollers. If you have no rules, if you have a culture based on optimism and naivety, you cannot detect bad actors. They are invisible. All you see is pain and damage, and lots of discussion on emails, and lots of arguments about, why are you arguing about this, guys? Well, why are you arguing about that? Just stop arguing. This was our experience in political NGOs. We had a few bad actors, and they were able to destroy our organizations with thousands of people. Because we didn't have good rules. We had, like, literally no good rules. The rules were terrible. The rules were written by bad actors. That's the worst part. Clean rules, bad actor hits it like a screen netting, bzz, falls to the floor. You like give them a second chance, because people make mistakes. Bzz, second time. Third time, bzz, hits it again. You're like, okay, it's been 2 weeks, it's been 3 or 4 road accidents, let's hold a public tribunal. And once a year I do this, I have a court case on the email list, and I cite the crimes, I ask witnesses, I give the criminal person a chance to respond. They always blame me, and I fire them. I blacklist them, and I tweet about it. I'm very happy to have found one more WASP. And it makes people very happy to know that they're protected from that kind of behavior. And the overriding feeling in your community, as it should be in your team, your office, your home, should be happiness. It's very simple, and it should be the happiness of security and being protected by people who have the power to do that. And if you're the founder of a community, use your power to protect the good people from the bad people. And that's kind of the basis. Now, technical aspects, breaking master, feature creep, help, issues, support, popular project. Oh my God, what do I do? The first thing is relax. Take a deep breath, don't panic. It's never as dramatic as you think. If master breaks, no one really cares. No one's going to wake up in the middle of the night saying, oh my God, master broke. Right? Really, no one really cares that much. And secondly, it's not your problem. Make it someone else's problem. So with ZeroMQ, we learned to, I'm quite proud of that. We were very devious. Make it always someone else's problem. I'll give you an example. So we, and this is in our contract, we say a patch will be accepted if it doesn't break master. It's a simple rule. I will still merge it anyway. That's accept is kind of fuzzy. I will not undo it afterwards, but I will merge patches. But a patch should not break master. Good enough. What does that mean to break master? Well, it means that we have something like Travis running all the time on master, and if it passes Travis the green light, the patch is okay. That's okay, right? Well, we started with very few regression tests, with almost no tests. We had a few tests. They were very minimal, nasty, thin, lousy tests. So you could break master and nobody would know about it. In fact, master was broken by the original author. He broke master all the time, so he had fun doing that. So we started saying, if you make a change and you want the change to remain in the product for any length of time, you're highly motivated to make a test case. Otherwise, anyone can remove your code and nobody will notice. It's not quite blackmail, but it's very close. It's your patch as a change has no status until it has test cases, until it has documentation. And the more you invest in it, the more it's protected against people taking it away or modifying it. That actually reflects reality. It means you can put an experimental change in there. If you don't break existing code, that's great. The cost is very low. You won't hurt anybody. There's no negatives. People can start using it, and if they like it, you can then document it and make test cases over time. I don't care if it's raw and unfinished, because there's no cost. The regression tests are a contract with the outside world. On the other side, if you're making applications and you depend on this code tree, then you invest in tests. That's your contract with the code base. And so these two are completely independent now. You can modify master, you can add whatever you like, you can experiment. If, for example, there is a performance cost to a change, and that affects applications, and they care, they should have made a test that tested performance. If they didn't care. This level of kind of blackmail and coercion forces people to invest in tests, and they do this very happily, it turns out. And so we get more and more and more test cases, like there's way too many test cases. And we break master sometimes, it's very rare. And there are a few other things that help make very small patches, only solve one problem at a time. We've documented all of these again. I think we use more than continuous delivery. I think we have a continuous supply chain of projects where we've also learned to make small projects A project should have 2 or 3 core brains and a cloud of contributors and many more users. And we don't have big projects that do many things. We have small projects that specialize, which work together. And every project is a client of other projects and a supplier to other projects. And the supply chain runs in real time. So we still do stable releases and we still do packages, but they are for certain kinds of users. They are for Debian and Ubuntu and businesses. Most people that use ZeroMQ now and its projects take the code from master all the time, whenever they need it. And my goal is to remove the whole concept of software versions completely. I think they're a bogus, invented, artificial, I don't know what it is. I like the versioning on contracts. I do not like the versioning on the software. Who is using Apache version 1.3 here? Well, no one cares, right? We use HTTP, as it should be. Now, the problem with allowing people to add anything they like is you get feature creep. Yes, you get people adding in stuff. Well, it's not that simple, because writing code which integrates into a fairly complex system and this is not simple stuff either, is expensive. It's painful. Someone's paying for your time. We don't get many people just having fun and just writing lots of contributions. They're always solving problems. If I look at the ZeroMQ community, the contribution chart over time, it's mostly working hours, mostly office hours. So it means people using the software in their work, finding problems, fixing the problems, and sending us the solution to those problems. Now this is very good. This is what the software should be doing. This is how it should be working. What we have is basically the users of the software, the contributors, acting as the learning machine for the software's evolution over time. The software evolves in parallel. And if somebody takes the time to solve a problem, then it's a real problem. That's my only criteria. You pay us, you do it yourself, or you wait. So we don't take feature requests. If you try to make one, I want this feature, I will just delete it or ignore it. We barely take issues, barely. If you find an issue in ZeroMQ and you aren't able to fix it in one way or another, then we don't really care. Now, some people do. So issues become chatter for the community, but for the core maintainers, no. Master is working, we're happy. And again, the goal is to get people to work together rather than for people to give us work. And in the end, there is no us. So I've stopped working on ZeroMQ except when I want to. Or I'm paid to. I feel no stress about the software in terms of my responsibility, which I used to feel a lot for my open source. I used to have literally months and months and months of this. How do I make people like my software? How do I make it better? I spent years of my life writing beautifully, elegantly documented open source web servers and generations and whatever, code generations, whatever. And it's not worth it. Sir, now your turn.
If you're saying that like good code, good software is software that's used, it means probably also software is used by people who don't know coding. I mean, depends on the application. If your like framework which is used by other software, then
Right, so my assertion is that the users are somehow technically competent programmers.
yes.
Now, of course, users are not, but user is a very long set of people. The users of Android are a very long set of people, down to my kids who are young, and they don't program Android, I can be sure of that. But they're connected in a supply chain to people who are programming Android and who are technically competent, and they're maybe in China or India, and they're definitely able to send patches in. And so the supply chain is very important here. There's not a flat, here's my product, here's the world. It's not the way it works. That is an illusion of a caricature of technology. It's a 1950s science fiction movie. The reality of technology is this endless supply chain. And you might as well embrace that and adopt it as your thinking model rather than assume that you have somehow users. What you have is a connection to the outside world where you supply answers to people's problems. And if you're lucky, you get problems back in and possibly solutions to those new problems coming back in. Right? So what we find, for example, with ZeroMQ is it's used by people who use it to build frameworks for other developers who use it to build frameworks for other developers who use it to build products for users. Often it's 3 or 4 levels. And the competence, of course, shifts down the line. We only care about our direct audience. They're the only ones that can tell us really what's going on. And we assume that if they're alive and eating, that they're economically relevant to their own audience, and therefore their problems are somehow real and valuable. And then we come over time to this core thing about utility and value over time. So look at this again. The software is built and managed by this cloud of people who are distributed, who never have video conferences, who never chat on IRC. They don't even know who each other they are, and they see each other by the pull requests. That's it. There's no cost to joining the group or leaving the group. You can be as many groups as you like. The software evolves organically across a broad range. It evolves. ZeroMQ now runs on every conceivable platform in every single conceivable language. Each of these has a small community which is pushing it very slowly towards some unknown direction. So whatever happens in the future, the software is adapting to it already. It's adapting constantly, learning constantly. It's not a thing that we make and then we deliver. There's a constant move. That's why I don't like software versions. So the relevance is more or less guaranteed by the process. Once you've gotten some traction, and there's not someone else who's better than you pretty much got the area. Competitors to ZeroMQ exist, and they tend to fail for interesting reasons. They fail because they use old models of development, or because they see the problem as a technological problem. They don't understand that it's about community. So what they do is they build a better product, which is quite simple. It's not that great software. I mean, software is good, but it's not perfect. But they build a better product themselves. And then they're back to, 2001. And they can't compete. And anyone else who is willing to invest becomes a contributor rather than a competitor. So this model also embraces rather than divides, which I like, my goal of world domination. Yes. So the users are a learning machine, exactly. And the learning machine has these little cycles of, I like it to describe this as you start by using something from somebody, and then you play with it, and you learn, and then you work, and then you teach. And these cycles of getting knowledge, improving it, I'm still on a rant, I'll come to you in a second, sir, and moving from play to real work to teaching others is very important. So I've also got a major problem with the way we make software in general, and the way that we buy into magical theories that we spend years and years and years learning, and then we spend our life applying, when we should be doing science in development. And science means lots of data, lots of experimentation, and then application, and constantly.
One of the difficulties of working on an open source project is having time to put in.
So the time to write code.
So can you speak a little bit about how you are commercially supported to spend time on?
This is very difficult to do. So the thing about I mean, it's difficult, but yet it solves itself. The thing about valuable pursuits in human culture is that they're often not profitable. Like, music and art and cooking and loving your children doesn't actually make money, right? It makes you feel good. It makes people happy, and that's worth a lot. It doesn't actually often make money. And most open source is chronically underfunded, and it's chronically poor and impoverished, and it's shoestring stuff. And I like that, actually. I think that's part of its success. I think, for example, a product like, again, and I really do like Wikipedia. Wikipedia is chronically underfunded. It's all run by volunteers who are spending precious, their precious life on helping other people somehow. Now, if they weren't doing that, if they were being paid to edit Wikipedia, which some people are, we know what happens, right? It's terrible. So if you want honesty, and science is about honesty, it has to be at some level in some cost in terms of your personal life and some cost in terms of your economic life. So that's the truth about open source, is that it does not make you rich. Then again, money is way overrated. And there are ways to make a good living from, helping people in certain ways. I make good money from helping people to use ZeroMQ in their business, and teaching people how to organize internally, and teaching people how to use, how to not, intellectual property and so on, stuff that we learned. So you can make money in different ways, but the open source is really about knowledge sharing, and people ask us, how do you make money from open source? And my answer is like, how do you make money from clean water, or from public education, or from health? How do you make money from that? Well, you shouldn't be making money from that. Making money from clean water is almost taboo. It's a horrible thing to do. But clean water and health and public education are essential to building a good society, which is how we make our money. So it's a little bit of indirection. And what that means is that if your open source is even marginally relevant, it's actually economically viable to make it. Now, what this means in practice is that you have this brilliant idea, and you want to start this project, open source project. You're going to have to invest something in that. There's a minimal project you've got to make. It's like building a tent. You've got to buy the tent and find the ground and open your tent up. It's going to take you some time. It may take you a weekend. It may take you 2 weeks. It shouldn't take you more than that. If you spend 2 months on something, it's too much. And in those 2 weeks, you should have something that someone else can use. One person can download and can try. And if nobody cares about it, you leave it. Maybe in 6 months, somebody will take it and try it. Maybe you're too soon. Maybe the problem you tried to solve, no one really cares about. Maybe you put your tent up in winter, and you've got to wait till summer. That happens. But it costs you nothing. That's important. You're taking no risk. You're making no major investment. If you're believing in some problem, you want to solve it, you make a minimal solution, cheaply, and you put it there, visibly, on GitHub, obviously. It's a no-brainer. Make a nice license, make a nice policy, and say, hey guys, or women, ladies, you're all welcome. Use it, here's a policy, puff. And if you're in a space where people are actually looking for something, you'll be picked up, people will take it, and because it's a raw little thin product, they will invest in it easily and happily because there's no ego to fight with, right? So the smaller the better. So no cost yet, this is still small. And because we have this amazing process, now we do, which solves the problems of managing the community and managing your expectations of the people using it, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It takes the cost down to zero, basically. People make patches, you merge them. I mean, that's the cost is, pressing merge on your phone now and then. And when someone makes 3 or 4 good patches, you're like, maintainer, woohoo! Oh. It used to be with ZeroMQ that the role of maintainer was a very precious role. It was the wizard of the software. The maintainer could understand the whole code base. He could review all the patches and improve them. He could actually understand how Git worked internally. Yes, I'm not joking. It was that far. He could make branches and merge them back in. He could do this correctly without mistakes in Git. Wow. He could make the releases. So the maintainer was like God. And of course, he really liked being God. That was his thing. It was like, And I'm like, this sucks because I'm a better programmer than you, I keep saying to you, my friend. But you seem to have all the power in this project, and yet it's my money, and this is wrong. So I was offended by that. So one of my goals was to stupidify the role of maintainer. How can I know? I wanted it to be, I have projects where my daughter's maintainer. She's 12, right? And she can press the merge button. And I've made her maintainer on projects, and she gets an email, and if she does it right, she gets more pocket money. And I'm like, Noemi, you're now paid maintainer. Press the merge button. Like, Daddy, it's not Facebook, I'm like, don't give me that. And it actually works, because the emotional ping you get from someone merging your patch, it doesn't matter whether that person is competent or not competent. It's about having a human interaction, about being recognized. Someone says hi. We don't say, who are you to say hi to me? Can I see your CV first? I don't, what's that hi worth? Is that like a great hi or a small hi? No, we don't do that. We're just like, wow, someone said hi to me. And so we were able to separate all the jobs out into small pieces where it took minimal knowledge and dedication to do each one, but there was none of this magic wizardry of no, the whole thing. That was very great, very awesome. So we have a question on stable releases and stable versions. Basically, with ZeroMQ, we now come to the situation where someone says, Peter, we need official release because we have to get this into Debian and we need this, and these fixes from the last time. And I'm like, okay, let's do that next week. So now it's on demand. And it can be one or two in the same month. It can be a year between. So stable releases have now become a on-demand answer to community questions, which it should be, because it seems strange that someone outside myself, I'm not using ZeroMQ in live work, decides to make a stable release because somehow I feel good about it. People should be asking for it. And by default, what there is good. Or it's broken, they make a new release. Right? So we're not driven by our internal roadmaps. We don't have internal roadmaps. We don't have internal rhythms anymore. They're very much driven by our users, our contributors. And if they decide they want to release, then somebody tags a release now. And now a release is simply, on most projects, just a tag in GitHub. It's really nice. And I have to say that GitHub has been really, really, really helpful for this. I assume Git work in the same way internally, and I assume they use their own tools, because they have, for the last, I don't know how many years, consistently solved the problems that we were looking at and done it the right way, consistently. So I'm really a fan of GitHub. And if anyone says otherwise, I will. Because GitHub is awesome. They have made our life solved. The issue tracker does what we want. I can now tag releases in GitHub. It does what I want. I can merge in GitHub. It does what I want. It's been really good. So for me, that's also a sign that this process, this collaborative process of freely organizing around problems is not our invention. It's been invented by other companies, other organizations. Some have documented, some have not documented, and I believe Git is one of those companies that's done it like this, internally. Non-coding aspects, maintaining server, mailing lists, etc. So this has been my job in ZeroMQ for a while, and I've been always hoping to, not really hoping, but for me the test of when the community was mature was when the problem disappeared. It's not so much about people taking over the job. Like, we have a mailing list. For me, at some point, the concept of a central discussion point will go away. I think that that whole concept of a mailing list is artificial. It's very useful, but I think it's artificial. I think that even the concept of discussing is wrong, right? And this is very interesting, because what we've seen is, in the past, what we had when we had our old way of working, which was it's a good science to have before and after. That's all I can say. But in the old way of working, we would have a lot of discussion on the mailing list about what we should do. And this is a well-known symptom in many projects, is that let's discuss, let's have an agreement, let's have upfront consensus, right? Who likes upfront consensus? Good. We can all agree on the editor that we will use, and we'll carry on, right? It's going to be Vim or Kate, right? We agree? No, we can't. Of course we can't. So the reality of a distributed system is you cannot get consensus at any point, let alone upfront. What you get is kind of fuzzy overtime agreement on contracts, and that's it. I'm still on a rant, but I'll come back. So there's no consensus. Don't look for it. This is number one. So asking for consensus is saying to someone, please punch me in the stomach. It's really just that. This is asking for trouble. It's as bad as it gets, because you're giving the bad actors a chance to interfere in the process over and over again, and they do this over and over again. So forget consensus. That's why if there's a patch waiting to be merged, and people start discussing the patch, I merge it right away. Right? It kills discussion. Oh, it's been merged. Okay, too late. Stop talking about it. Then what they do, they go and fix it, as they should. Like, why are you discussing? Just merge the patch, and if you have an opinion, express it with another patch. As my contract says, you express your opinions on code through code, not through verbal discussions about someone's indentation style. Of course, you can tell people, dude, I think that you should be looking at the style guide because you really don't get this, and they'll be like, okay, cool. But doesn't have to go on the mailing list. That's a simple discussion on a topic, which is the patch. So we find that the the threads around specific problems become little discussions which live and then they get frozen in time. I think that this gentleman behind you was...
So with regard to kind of merge first, fix first, isn't it this kind of attitude that gave rise to the whole
No, I can't hear you. You have to either shout or use the microphone or come down, because...
So with regards to kind of merging patches first and fixing bugs and resolving issues later, isn't it this kind of attitude that gave us Heartbleed vulnerability, where a relatively junior developer committed a well-meaning patch that added a bit of useful functionality, but it wasn't correctly reviewed, and 18 months down the line, it's a complete massacre?
So again, as I said, if the patch does not break any existing test cases, then it's invisible. It's like saying, I add in this thing here, and that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is that could be toxic code. It could be poisonous code. It could be someone doing quite unpleasant things deliberately. I think we're almost finished, though, aren't we? Like 2 minutes. So people are looking at the code all the time. The code is not some black box. The code is being looked at obsessively all the time. It's like Wikipedia. People are reviewing code over and over and over again. People have this strong emotional connection to the code, and they're looking at it. They're reading it. I do this. Everyone in the community does that. We look at the code all the time. There is lots of review of patches. I just said we don't review the patches before we merge them. That's all. I didn't say we don't look at the code. Of course, look at the code. However, the review process and the merging are two separate things. Merge first, review second. I'm really sorry we've run out of time. We have some Nano users here. I like Nano. Nano is great. The software is fantastic, but there's problems in the community of Nano. And this is one of the reasons why. I'm sorry about that. But come and beat me up afterwards. We have to finish this now. I'm really sorry. Thank you.